Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Season of the Witch Girl at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. A black teenager allegedly stabbed a white teenager to death at a Texas track meet over a seat under a tent. In this alleged incident that took place at a track meet in Frisco, Texas, 17-year-old black teenager Karmelo Anthony was attending this track meet, and as he was attending this track meet, he decided to go sit under the bleachers of the competing school's tent. Now, as he was sitting in the bleachers of the competing school's tent, this is where 17-year-old Austin Metcalf took offense, and as he allegedly took offense, he then demanded that Karmelo Anthony not sit in the space reserved for the competing school, even though all of the space was open for all the students, and at many track meets, many kids just basically sit wherever they want in order to see the action. Now, in the case of Karmelo Anthony, he got into an argument with Austin Metcalf, and as Austin Metcalf, the white student, started to become more aggressive, he allegedly wound up breaking Karmelo Anthony's cell phone as he escalated the argument. And as he escalated the argument, this is where Karmelo Anthony started to become even more defensive. And as he became more defensive, he started to get emotional. And as he started to get emotional, he started making more threats and made a threat allegedly towards the life of Austin Metcalf. And as he allegedly made this threat, this is where Austin Metcalf further escalated things. Once he saw Karmelo Anthony allegedly pull a pocket knife, he went to put hands on Karmelo Anthony, and this is where Karmelo Anthony allegedly stabbed Austin Metcalf, and Austin Metcalf wound up dying in the arms of his twin brother. Now, after Karmelo Anthony allegedly stabbed Austin Metcalf, this is where police then took him into custody, and after police wound up taking him into custody, this is where Karmelo Anthony wound up confessing to taking the life of Austin Metcalf, who was known to be a bully. And after he did this, he wound up being charged with murder and being charged with possession of a weapon and taken into custody. Now, the police in Frisco see the behavior of Karmelo Anthony as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of both the behaviors of Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf, it definitely fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that Austin Metcalf was definitely the one who instigated this entire incident over nothing, because when it comes down to these public spaces, they're open for all students. And since they're open for all students, the only thing he should have been doing was focusing on his performance at this track meet and not focus on where people are sitting. Unfortunately, when it comes to beta males become very territorial, and as they become very territorial, what they want to do is go out here and participate in tribalism, and as they participate in this tribalism, what they want to do is go out here and assert their dominance over a space, and not really think about more important things like as related to their intangibles, such as their health, their safety, and their freedom, and their life. And sadly, in the case of Austin Metcalf, he basically wound up escalating a situation because he didn't have any good critical thinking skills or any sort of ability to be able to resolve problems, because him getting upset over this kid sitting in this area shouldn't have been a problem. No, it shouldn't have been a problem at all. But because this guy, again, wanted to have his smooth world, he basically created chaos at this track meet, by, again, instigating this situation, not thinking about how this makes the school look, how it makes the family look, because this guy, again, wanted to be the bully, wanted to, again, bully this black child because he wanted to assert his power as a white male. That's what I believe he wanted to do in this situation, and he wanted to do this in this situation, I believe, basically because he basically felt emboldened by years of bullying people, and basically as he went to bully Karmelo Anthony, his mouth wrote a check, his backside couldn't cash, and he wound up basically running into one who was ready for him. Now, in the case of Karmelo Anthony, on the other side, basically, again, here was a guy who I believe had every right to defend himself in this situation because he did not do anything wrong outside of basically escalating the situation, getting into it with this dude. Now, when I was in high school, I ran into situations like this, and as I ran into guys like this, I remember I was in a health class, one guy wanted to sit next to his friend, and I didn't sit there and argue with the dude. I just basically got up and walked because I understood there were more important things for me as related to that whole situation. I understood that, one, I had a goal of getting my diploma. 2, I had a goal of passing this class. 3, I understood I needed my freedom in order to be able to do these things, and it just wasn't worth getting into it with this guy over something trivial. No, it wasn't worth getting into it with this dude over something trivial because this track, as I saw it, that health class was going to come and go, and basically Karmelo Anthony, he should have basically saw it as, in my eyes, that he should have come and gone, but it wouldn't have stopped this beta male, because had he walked away, when it came to beta males like this, and I know this from my experience of dealing with bullies, you can walk away from this bully, and he'll continue to look to escalate a situation. So Karmelo Anthony basically had his back against the wall with this beta male who, again, didn't understand how optically he was making his school look, how he was making his family look. No, what he saw was a black person who he wanted to put in his place, and as he saw this black boy who he wanted to put in his place, this is where this white supremacist basically wanted to, again, escalate his behavior because he wanted to show and assert his dominance. He wanted to go out here and put on a show to let this black male know not to enter white spaces and send a message to everyone that you don't go into these spaces. Now, this is the reason why he further escalated his behavior by breaking Karmelo Anthony's cell phone, according to some reports, and looking to continue to argue with him because, again, any sort of person would have said, okay, I'm not going to get into it with this dude. I will let the coach handle it because, again, the coach is the adult running this whole event. And with the coach, he will go out here and tell this person what to do and let the coach handle it. But no, this beta male, again, wanted to, again, escalate things because he wanted to be the one to show his power as a man, because he was feeling insecure and inadequate about his own masculinity and his own manhood, and wanted to go out here and show everybody who had some balls, but he had some raisins between his legs, and again, wanted to go out here and look to, again, go out here and humiliate this black boy. But when it came down to Karmelo Anthony, he was about standing his ground as related to someone who he perceived to be a threat, at this stadium event that they went to on April 2nd. Basically, he was looking to stand his ground against a threat, which is what everybody has the legal right to do in the state of Texas, just like the state of Florida. If you perceive someone to be a threat to you, you have a right to stand your ground, and that's what Karmelo Anthony did here as related to the letter of the law, a law that was basically, as I see it, written only to protect white supremacists, because when it comes down to that law, we're going to see what the interpretation of that law is as related to Karmelo Anthony, a young black boy. This young black boy will basically test the metal of this law to see if the interpretation of the law will protect this black boy, just like it is going out here and protected many of these white assailants, such as Kyle Rittenhouse, such as Daniel Penny, and others like George Zimmerman. I mean, these stand your ground laws are basically where they were designed to be able to justify the deaths of black people like Trayvon Martin and many others. They were designed to, again, lead to the deaths of black people. But we have a case here where it looks like the white supremacists are going to reap what they sowed, greater than what they sowed, later than what they sowed, with these stand your ground laws, because here we have a black teenager in Karmelo Anthony who was standing his ground, again, standing his ground as related to the letter of the law, as related to who he perceived to be a threat. He perceived that this boy, Austin Metcalf, was a threat to him because he had gone out here and instigated the argument, to escalated his behavior by breaking his cell phone, according to some reports, and further looking to put hands on him as he pulled a weapon. And as he again escalated his behavior, this is where Karmelo Anthony had a right, according to the law, to defend himself, and he only had a knife. He only had a knife in this situation. And again, we have other individuals like Kyle Rittenhouse and George Zimmerman who had firearms and were allowed to stand their ground. And this whole case basically will test the metal of this law, as related to this whole situation, because when we look at the letter of the law, again, stand your ground means a person has a right to defend themselves when they are perceiving a threat that was basically created by this teenager, Austin Metcalf, who again instigated this whole situation, and basically tarnished the reputation of Frisco's Memorial High School at this tournament that took place at the Kukendall Stadium. I mean, when you're at a tournament event, you're supposed to be on your best behavior because you're representing the school. And if you saw a kid, again, sitting at the bleachers as related to a competing team, that's not something you're supposed to get involved with. No, if you feel so strongly, what you're supposed to do is go tell the coach, and the coach being one of the head supervisors of this event, and again, the supervisor of the team, he will go out here and speak to that student, or he will speak to the competing coach and tell them, okay, this kid is sitting in that area. But the coach didn't do that because, again, this was an open event. People can sit wherever they want. But this guy, again, didn't like the idea of a black boy asserting power as a man. And what he wanted to do was go out here and humiliate this black boy, make an example of him. And he thought he was going to be a softer male. No, what he ran into was a hard male. He ran into a hard male who basically stood his ground as related to things. And basically the only mistake that I believe that he made was going out here and confessing to that entire incident, confessing to everything, because what he did was basically not understand his rights under Miranda law, because he was not taught to navigate through his emotions, and when he was in custody, to say, no, I'm not saying anything until I have a lawyer, because the whole thing is, if you start talking, anything you say can and will be used against you, in court. That's what can happen to a boy like Karmelo Anthony, similar to what happened with the Central Park Five. The Central Park Five went out here and made confessions to a crime they did not commit because they were coerced to make those confessions, and that's the only mistake that Karmelo Anthony made in this entire situation. The only mistake I believe that he made, because again, I've dealt with these kinds of bullies growing up in my teen years in the 80s and the early 90s, and I know that they do not know when to stop. I know that they don't know what boundaries are, and since they don't know what boundaries are, they escalate their behavior. They keep pushing buttons. They don't know where the end is. And what's sad here is that adults didn't come in and check this boy, who again was making their school look bad. I mean, Frisco's Memorial High School looks really bad in this situation because you had coaches who didn't check this student and let him know, look, when we go out here, you're representing our school. You're representing our colors of our school. You're representing everything here. I mean, we're here for the track meet. And again, he basically, again, started some mess that I believe led to him, again, his mouth wrote a check, his ass couldn't cash, and sadly what happened to this kid, basically, again, I believe mostly is his own fault, because any other person would have just said, okay, he's sitting up here, this tournament's going to be over, this track meet's going to be over soon, I'm thinking about going to get me some Zaxby's or whatever they have down there, or go into one of these spots out here and getting some chicken sandwiches or some hamburgers. I mean, the whole point, again, after you do the event, is you go hang out with your friends, and you don't worry about that kid from another school. No, but this guy, again, because he was caught up in his feelings about his white supremacy, wanted to, again, assert his dominance over this black kid, and again, basically created a situation where we're going to see if this whole law that they created, Stand Your Ground, is basically applies to black people, and it should apply to black people the same way it's been applied as related to law for Hispanics like George Zimmerman, whites like Kyle Rittenhouse, and people like Daniel Penny. I mean, Daniel Penny, there isn't even a stand your ground law here, but it was considered to be self-defense when he went out here and choked out Jordan Neely, a mentally ill black man who, again, most New Yorkers would have passed by. I mean, I've seen many people, many times when I was on trains, people having episodes like this, and I never felt threatened once as related to them. No, I would basically, again, get up and move to another car or get off and, again, leave the train if I see somebody having an episode like this and make no eye contact. That's life here in New York. But Daniel Penny, again, basically, as I see it, got away with this crime because he was white, and the system basically wanted to protect him. You had bootlegs like Alvin Bragg looking to give him a pass, and in the case of Daniel Penny, again, he got a pass the same way Kyle Rittenhouse got a pass, even though he was not supposed to, again, a minor was not supposed to have a weapon in Kenosha. Again, kid goes down to a riot where he's not supposed to be at all, but he comes to that riot, again, starts up by just being there, and again, he gets a pass. Same thing with George Zimmerman. Here we have a guy who, again, had no business getting into it with Trayvon Martin, and again, was able to go free. But I have to wonder, will Carmelo Anthony get that same pass when he was actually standing his ground as related to the letter of the law? Because under Texas law, again, a person has a right to a concealed weapon. Now, he wasn't supposed to have it on school grounds, but this really wasn't school grounds. This was a stadium as related to things. And again, this whole thing basically, again, looks like, again, they're going to try to, again, railroad this young black man, a young black man who basically was in crisis because he was not taught about the unwritten social rules as related to black and white, wasn't taught the unwritten social rules about white supremacy, wasn't taught the rules about anti-black racism, because when it comes down to these anti-black racists, again, they look for any little moment to go out here and escalate a situation because they're so insecure about themselves and the size of their Vienna sausage. Again, they're so insecure, they look for any situation to escalate it into a fight to prove their manhood, and that shows how these males are men in crisis because, again, you escalated a situation that embarrassed your school, you escalated a situation that made your entire neighborhood look bad, made your family look bad to the point where your own father couldn't justify your own actions. That's what this boy Austin Metcalf wound up doing, embarrassing his school, embarrassing his family, all because he got caught up in his feelings about his world not being smooth. His world not being smooth because a black person had the audacity to go sit in a seat under some bleachers that were built for everyone. That just shows how racist this kid was. How racist this kid was because he couldn't stand a black kid sitting somewhere for about maybe 20, 25 minutes, an hour. I mean, something that, again, most people would have just brushed off. Most of the coaches had brushed it off. And he basically escalated this situation where he went from being a man who was alive to a man in crisis in hell to winding up in a situation where he's basically, again, in a place where he's with some demons, possibly, again, as related to things. And hopefully what will happen here is that Karmelo Anthony won't wind up having to pay for a crime that he did not commit, because I don't believe he murdered this boy. And again, it doesn't even meet the standard for murder, because murder is with malice aforethought. This was done out of emotion for self-defense. Again, done out of emotion in self-defense to someone who he believed to be a threat, because when he broke the cell phone, possibly the boy was looking to call the police to get himself some help. But when he broke the phone, he basically looked to, again, corner Karmelo Anthony. So when I look at this whole situation, again, this is where America will be exposed for the hypocrite it is if it allows this boy to be convicted of a murder he did not commit. If the criminal justice system in Texas allows this boy to be convicted of this murder, it will basically cement that the legal precedent in this country is there's the difference between black and white, and show us all that many of these so-called right-wing individuals are completely full of it, because this is a clear case of stand your ground, as related to the law. Again, we're going to see if the law is a difference between black and white, because as I see it, I mean, if this was this guy, again, is a clear case of anti-black racism, and this is a clear case of why we need tangibles like the anti-black hate crime bill to punish racists like this. As related to these type of crimes. These type of crimes, again, where people will think twice before they escalate a trivial situation. They'll think twice before they get in the face of a black person and look to sate their insecure feelings about having to be in the presence of black people. They'll think about that if there's a federal anti-black hate crime bill. That's what we need in this case as related to places like this. I mean, as I see it, again, this young man, Karmelo Anthony, basically, again, did nothing wrong outside of defending himself and possibly, again, getting too emotional. I mean, he didn't know how to navigate through his emotions because, again, as someone who's been in that situation, I know that sometimes you have to try to, again, swallow your pride and mitigate that cost, because you want to get your diploma and you want to maintain your freedom to get your diploma. And a lot of times you're dealing with folks out here who are looking to start some mess, whether it be at your school or another school, and you gotta basically, again, hold your tongue and hold your peace sometimes and just let something go because you see something better. Sometimes you gotta do that in order to be a man, because if you get into it with a man in crisis like this, it'll lead to you being in a crisis. And sadly, that's what's happening here with Karmelo Anthony. And I pray that this young man is able to preserve his freedom, because he was defending himself as I see it. He was defending himself in this situation, and as he was defending himself in this situation, sadly, when it came down to Karmelo Anthony, he went from a boy on his way to growing up and graduating from school and being a part of extracurricular activities that would help him go to college, to winding up on a road to being a man in crisis who possibly is on a situation where he may be railroaded through the criminal justice system. Now, if you want to learn how to identify the behavior of beta males and how to help the young boys in your community grow up to be healthy men, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos talking about the man crisis in this country, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.